This is eelgrass. Underwater meadows of it were once found up and down the East Coast wherever fishermen dredged for bay scallops. These days, in almost all of those harbors, the eelgrass is gone, and so are the scallops. But eelgrass can still be found in Nantucket Harbor and in Nantucket Harbor on the west end of the island, and so a commercial bay scallop fishery still works those harbors each fall and winter. These days, both the eelgrass and the fishery are in decline here, and so a large slice of the winter economy, of island culture and history, clings to slender stalks of eelgrass, waiting to see if it will all disappear.
I went with my uncle when I was just a little kid, maybe 8, 10 years old. And then when I got to be 12 years old, I could get my own license. And Charlie Sales and I forget now, I had the outboard, or I had the boat, or he had the outboard and I had the boat. We applied and they said if they're ambitious enough to ask for one, we'll give them one. And that was it. It cost all of $5 in those days. And then we just did it like on Saturdays, you know, and because you can scallop on Saturdays those days, you know. So anytime school vacation and holidays and like that, we'd go.
Yeah, I'm not from here, and when I did come here back in the early '80s, I got a job at the fish market down there. So the scallopers were coming in with their catch, and I grew up near the water, on the water, but not from a fishing family. So to be on the waterfront and to become connected to it provided a certain acceptance to the Nantucket community for me. One of the concerns that we have is that the Cape towns that used to have scallops really no longer do, not to speak of. Once in a while they'll get a small set, but to know that their fisheries have disappeared and to have ours under so much pressure from development and whatnot, that's what moves.
Eelgrass is really important because it's an indicator of a healthy ecosystem. There aren't a lot of communities that have eelgrass, and the communities that do have eelgrass are doing a lot of eelgrass restoration work. A lot of people say once you lose your eelgrass, you lose your scallops.
They actually have a little foot like a snail, and what that does is allow them to climb up the stalks of the eelgrass. And the bottom of the harbor is populated with all kinds of crabs that walk around the bottom. And if the little scallop larvae can climb up the eelgrass, they are much, much safer. If they're down low on the bottom or within the 2 inches of the bottom, then they get eaten. And 20% of them survive. If they climb up 6 inches, then 80% of them survive. So the eelgrass structure is so very, very important for the scallops to survive.
Everywhere else in the bay scallops range, there's already what we call commercial extinction. Oh yes, you can find a few bay scallops, but there aren't enough to have a fishery. And every year we have a smaller catch. You go back to the 60s and 70s and there were nearly 100,000 bushels taken. And now we're lucky to get 10 or 12,000 bushels. So yes, something's very wrong.
So we've been surveying the harbor for the last 10 years. And like 40 different spots in the harbor. And we've been measuring the eelgrass coverage, and we find that it goes down at about 5% per year. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you've been doing it for a decade, and suddenly you find you've lost half the eelgrass in much of the harbor.
Eutrophication is a big word that explains a lot of the work that I do. Eutrophication is basically when nutrients enter a coastal water body and estuary, and when those nutrients are derived from human impacts, which are one of the main culprits for eelgrass decline worldwide right now, it's called cultural eutrophication. And cultural eutrophication comes from septic systems, and it comes from fertilizer use.
The eelgrass just gets choked out. It can't grow. And then you start losing your eelgrass, and you start getting more invasive species that thrive in high nutrient concentrations like codium or the lingbia, and those aren't algae that are favorable for shellfish growth.
I'm not sure where the island's going to be 10 years from now. I hope there's still going to be a healthy fishery here, but you know, we're playing catch up right now.
We've been talking about this for 20 years, the water quality, and we've been talking about what we need to do.
When you hear people talking about nutrients entering the harbor, what they're talking about is nitrogen loading. Nitrogen feeds the algae, which in turn kills the eelgrass. Not all of it is man-made, but a good portion of that nitrogen gets into the harbor as runoff from fertilized lawns and as leakage from septic systems. The science sounds simple. Doing something about it is never simple.
This change to the harbor didn't happen overnight. This is 10 years in the making. We're finally getting around to making some hard changes, but you know, we've been talking about sewering the harbor watershed for years. We're finally at a point to do it. You know, everything seems to run at a snail's pace when it comes to fixing problems. So, you know, I'm hoping that this year at town meeting we can convince the voters to fund these sewer extensions, but it's a lot of money, so we'll have to see what happens.
We don't want to wait until there's no eelgrass before we start thinking about why there's no eelgrass.
I do find that it's true that there are many pieces to the puzzle when it comes to solving the problem. You know, there's water quality, there's fertilizer, there's septic systems, there's moorings, there's boat traffic, there's all kinds of stuff that play into this issue that we have here on Nantucket, and it's not uncommon. Other communities have the same thing. It's just that we have a really precious fishery that we need to protect and preserve.
I asked a few guys, I said, well, how do you do it? And they said, well, just go out and follow the fleet. So I didn't do that, and I sort of decided that I was going to try and figure out what I was doing by myself. And I used to stand on the culling board and pull up the dredges with a ice hook, and then jump down back into the boat and start culling whatever I caught. And I learned a lot that first year. There's definitely another learning curve where you have to figure out how the bottom is configured all throughout the harbor, which takes probably at least 10 years. As Ron Shepard said, scalloping's an irresponsible way to make a living. It'd definitely be a loss to the culture of the island if the industry failed, because this is what supported the island forever. You know, for the last 100 years probably. Whether it was a good way to make a living or not, it's what put this thing in place here. I want to see this industry survive, because I've got a youngster that maybe will be irresponsible and you know, try and make a living doing this if he stays on Nantucket.